Hi, this is Hillary Morris, Equine Specialist with the Augusta Co-op, and today we're going to talk a little bit about basics of feed ingredients. We hear a lot of talk in the horse community about different buzzwords in nutrition. We hear a lot about non-structural carbs, kind of what we can do to help fuel our horses, how we can help them maintain weight. But today I wanted to go back and just touch base on what basic feed ingredients we use, what we can do to those ingredients to help our horses better digest them, and what they provide individually to the whole feed ration. So first we're going to look at an example of a feed tag. You see lots of different things. The highlighted ingredients that I have on here are ones that we're going to talk about today. And this is, a typical, you see wheat midds, whole oats, flaked corn, crimped barley, distillers, beet pulp, soybean meal. Those are very, very common in horse feed. Our first ingredient that we have up is wheat midds. Now, wheat midds are a product of the wheat milling industry. And basically, if you have a pelleted feed that you fed your horse, it is going to have wheat midds in it. So basically, flour is made entirely from the starchy part of the grain. What's left behind is the germ, or the protein, fat, and vitamin-rich bran or fiber part of that. So wheat midds are composed of different fractions of both of those byproducts. So we actually use this because it is a lower starch ingredient. So it can reduce the starch amount while maintaining calories. So we use this, like I said, again, very, very commonly in horse feed, especially in pelleting. Next up are oats. Oats are obviously the go-to thing when you think of horses. You think of oats, and this was what we fed horses solely. At one point in time, you hear of lots of race horses eating oats, and that is because they can fuel a horse with the starch that they contain. It's a very good calorie source. You get a decent amount of oil from oats as well. They provide some protein and amino acids, but they really lack important nutrients that performance horses probably need. So that's why even now, even racehorse trainers do supplement with feed other than just oats. And let's see, crimping actually adds to the digestibility of the oats, and you can see a non-crimped oats or whole oats versus that crimped oat there. So 5 pounds of oats contain 1.82 pounds of starch, just as a side note there. Next up, we're going to cover barley. Barley is another very good ingredient that we use commonly in horse feed. It's relatively high in protein, about 8 to 13% protein. It tends to be really hard when it's whole, so steam flaking or rolling, generally, if it's going to be in a horse feed, it's going to be processed. It's kind of between corn and oats as far as the feed value goes. It provides extra digestible energy, but it's not as palatable as oats or corn by themselves. So really you don't see people feeding barley as a straight feed by itself. It's relatively low in the methionine and lysine, which are important amino acids that horses need as well. All right, next up is corn. Corn is used in horse feed in multiple different ways. Specifically, flaked corn is something that we use here at the Augusta Co-op in our elite feed line. It's commonly used because it's really readily available. It's low cost and it's high calorie. So this corn that has been steam flaked looks like this here. It almost looks like like cornflake cereal. That process results in higher starch digestibility. So when you decrease the density of that flake too, it further increases how well the horse can digest the corn itself. So 4.3 pounds of whole corn contain 2.7 pounds of starch. So high starch diets obviously can lead to increased chances of insulin resistance and equine metabolic syndrome later in life. And really it really should be processed in order for a horse to absorb it and digest it effectively. A byproduct of corn that we often use is dried distillers grains. So it's generally originates from corn, wheat, or rye. It's a byproduct of distilling. So we use distillers. You hear them called distillers. They also can come from milo and barley malts as well. They're high methionine levels, which is an amino acid I mentioned before, which is something that we need for our horses to maintain. And so basically there's yeast from the distilling process that actually adds dry yeast cells into your feed when you use distillers, and it's really high in B vitamins. So we do have it is a decent fat source and an additional phosphorus source for our horse feeds as well. All right, next up is beet pulp. Beet pulp is really commonly used, not only as an ingredient in feed, but as something that people feed, separately. It's actually a byproduct of sugar beet processing. It's the fibrous material that's left over after the sugar is extracted out of there. And despite being a product of the sugar beet, beet pulp itself is actually low in starch and sugar, and other non-structural carbs. And it's actually higher in energy and fiber. So it has a reasonable source of calcium, higher than most grains, but not as high as, let's say, like alfalfa, hay, or something like that. Next, we have soybean meal, which is our last ingredient we're going to be talking about. It is a byproduct after extruding most of the oil from whole soybeans. Most commonly used protein source in North America. Soybeans are very readily available to us here. They're an ideal protein source because it contains increased concentrations of amino acids. So lysine specifically here in soybean meal is really important. And then actually one more thing would be soy hulls, which is going to be the outside of that soybean itself. It's a really good fiber source that we use. Not easy to feed solely because it's not very tasty to a horse. Pelleted soy hulls can be purchased, but they tend to be pretty hard, so which would deter a horse from really wanting to eat them. So it offer increased energy as well, and it's usually mixed into commercial feeds, not fat alone. So in conclusion, I would say that, most importantly, consult your veterinarian before making any major changes to your horse's diet. There are experts in equine nutrition out there. They're willing to help. They offer all sorts of information if you just know who to call and who to contact. And these ingredients that I spoke about in the last 10 minutes are definitely, you see what they are individually, and that's why we put them together, because individually they may not be suitable to feed a horse, but if we put them together, they can complement each other to make a really good balanced diet for a horse. Their commercial feeds are designed to be balanced. Reputable feed companies like we work with, Purina, Nutrina, our Elite Feed as well, they're designed by PhDs, and we are always looking for ways to improve. So there's always research being done into the equine nutrition realm. So I want to thank you for your time today, and if you have any questions, there's an email address and phone number listed here on the slide, and this is Hillary Morris, Equine Specialist with the Augusta Co-op.